You can bring us in, Brady.
You want me to?
Yeah.
All right.
Two guys who peaked in high school and one incredible sports broadcaster. We'll let you decide who that is. It's the Big Three Podcast with Brady Klain, Jack Kaiser, and Sam Wiederhaft.
Well, I don't think there's anybody better to decide the answer to that question. Who is the one incredible sports broadcaster than the man we have joining us at the very beginning of this show? And that's one Mr. Brian Spillbuller. We know him as Spill. We know him as the guy that only gives 18 out of 25s. We know him as the best radio teacher of all time. Spill, what's up? How you doing? Welcome back. Good to see you.
How you doing?
What's up?
Wonderful.
Great.
Good.
Great.
It's always good to talk with you. I know we talked a few weeks ago, but there's still some stuff going on. There's still more to catch up with, and these two wanted to talk with you as well. So thought about bringing you in today.
Great. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes because it's always an experiment with you guys. It feels like
that it is.
The first thing I wanted to bring up is that you preached to us how podcasts were the future when we were in high school. And we all were like, yeah, whatever. And here we are.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I don't know. Just saying like, I told you so just doesn't feel good enough, you know? So I'll avoid saying that. I won't say that I told you so, but, you know, I feel like you guys are taking it and running with it. And that's all that's really important, to be honest.
You can say you told us so because, I mean, we're receptive to that by now. We've heard it enough.
Yeah.
I've started to learn, like, you know, if I like it, I'm usually 5 years ahead of everybody. So
trendsetter
yeah,
is what we call that.
The 39-year-old trendsetter. That's exactly what I am.
Podcasts are the future, and we're all like, okay, old guy, whatever you say. Jack, you got something for me? I thought you were about to say
yeah. No,
So
speaking
I
of,
wanted to do.
you go ahead, Sam.
Sam's Wi-Fi is about 5 seconds after everybody.
Yeah, we're slow over here, and I wanted to hit you with the super hard hitting question first. So my brother, he's going to be a senior at Carmel. He's going to be the next sports director for W. And they had their last night, and that got me thinking. At our awards, you gave the sports award to me and Jack Kaiser, but you said it was decided by one vote. You're never going to tell us who actually won. And I wanted to see 4 years later.
Which one of you is taller?
Oh my God.
I think somebody
College
by an inch. So
hasn't affected my height. So
I think the taller guy won. So Sam, I don't know who that is, but I think the taller guy might have won.
Imagine being the third guy in the sports department and not getting anything. It's
Whatever.
fine.
You didn't get anything. You're
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
You got invaluable experience at one of the top high school radio programs in the entire world, Brady.
Yes, you're right. That's what it was. I'll take that with me. And that is what is on the wall at Carmel High School is experience.
Yes.
Oh, man.
What's the guy's name who's the professor there now?
Dominic James is his name. Met him a few times. He's an interesting dude. He's been like an admin, leadership teacher. I mean, he's kind of done a lot of different things, but he's English. And so when he first got the job, you know, we spoke a little bit, but then I would still go to football games and, you know, and we would run into each other at those and just started to form a relationship. I think he's done a great job. I mean, it's like anything else. It's no different than when I took the job. There's like a learning curve that occurs, but then also there's just like, it's somebody else's lead, you know? So he had to spend some time making it his own. And I think he's been doing a pretty good job with that so far.
Like you said, the learning curve, there's a difference between running a radio station and teaching, but this is both. Where does that learning curve, you know, mix?
Well, for me, it was, you know, I had only taught for 3 years when I took that job. So I was still evolving like who I was like 2006 as a teacher. And then I'm always comfortable like trying to learn new things, and I've been okay with technology, but the thing for me was that when I first got the job, all the hardware and the software and the programs and just the systems, it wasn't like I didn't know how to learn them. I just, on the spot, I didn't get the job until like July. So I had to start teaching in August. I get the job in July, and I didn't have an opportunity to really even get into the studios to figure out what was what. So I had to lean heavily on the seniors that year from that standpoint. And then, kind of by luck, a few years later, we did that huge remodel. So then I got to kind of decide what the systems would be. And that was super helpful. But, I think that for me, it was just, it's somebody else's setup. It's not that you can't learn it, but even after you learn it, you kind of identify things that you might do differently. And lucky for me, early on, I think after 2 years or so, we did that big remodel. And that was huge, because then I was the one that decided how all this was going to lay out. And it just gave me a lot more confidence to teach it.
How often do you still listen to WHJ?
There was a time when I was still listening a lot to like their online stuff. If I'm in the car, there'll be times that I do listen. I've noticed there's still things playing that were created, and I was there. Which again, that was probably the case, when I got the job as well. Right. But, and I do listen to some of their sports stuff, but I don't know. I really migrated. What we did with the sports department was that it was a passion of mine early on. So I dove in on it, like early in the development of the program. And it was like, that's where we're going to make a name. But once we kind of got that thing rolling, and by the time you guys came in, it had kind of been rolling. We had some really strong students come through, and then you guys kind of carried the torch, and I didn't have to oversee as much. So that's when I dove in on all the kind of ancillary web-based, podcast, story-based interview, all that kind of stuff. And that's really what I started to get more attracted to than like the live stuff necessarily. If you remember, like, we got away from live in general. I mean, there were not a lot of we did the shows, right? But we weren't encouraging a lot of talk shows. Mostly it was the sports guys that would do the talk shows. If you wanted to talk, I felt like people aren't tuning into WHJE other than a sporting event to listen to high school kids talk. That's kind of the way I felt. But they will go listen to a podcast or an interview, especially if they were the ones being interviewed. They'll go check that out on their own time. But, I don't listen live as much as I used to. And when I used to listen, it was because I liked the music, because I kind of picked it at the chagrin of all you guys. And I was just making sure nobody was doing anything stupid,
We would always find a couple songs that you threw in there that, weren't up your alley, that we would play all the time just to see if you were listening.
It was like 2 years ago. I think it was one of the Inskeep boys. I think it was Connor. So I'm driving, I'm listening, and it is some contemporary rap song that they're just blasting, and I was not teaching, but I got my phone out and I did like a little video and I put it out on social media with me listening to it. That's one of the last times I remember, really remembering what I heard, and was like, oh man, they're changing what they're doing now.
I'm surprised you didn't pick up the Batman phone and call into the studio and say, what are you doing?
The Batman phone, it might be the single greatest invention known.
Honestly, the scariest thing of all time.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I loved calling that thing, because you just the 15, 16-year-old kid, like, you can just feel the phone is shaking in their hand,
Oh, it was awful.
I'll never forget. I think it was my sophomore year during Radio Lab, maybe, where we had to make some like 30-second promo or commercial or whatever, and we had to use a sound effect. And mine was like god awful. I mean, just one of the worst things I've ever done in my life. And we had the Ring of Fire, or whatever you used to call it, where everyone would just critique it, and just got blasted. I mean, everybody just destroyed it. And I don't know. I kind of miss it.
I call it constructive criticism. I mean, I really wasn't trying to tear down, fragile 15-year-olds. It's not like my MO, but here's what it is, man, is that you guys had to put something out into the public. Okay. And we started off with like, the public is your peers. And that's like actually a little bit more intimidating than just putting it on the radio. It's like, if you have to sit there and listen to yourself over the loudspeakers in front of your friends, right? Like that's like the true test. Like, and what it does though, is it forced kids to take it seriously. Because if they didn't take it seriously and if they didn't try, it wasn't like they were just going to hide behind some paper that I could put a D+ on and nobody would know it. Like they had to stand behind what they did, you know, and that's the environment that it's a performance environment. It's no different than athletics, right? Like if, because, you know, obviously I coached at the same time that I taught, and it's like, look, you know, if you don't put in the time of practice and you don't take it seriously in the game, like you're going to get embarrassed, you know, and I can't help you. Like you're going to get embarrassed. So you better put in the time, you better take the pride, and then, you know, you'll learn from those experiences.
Between that and college, I mean, that got me, or between that and playing high school baseball, that got me ready for college. Like I've always been grateful for that, because it got me ready to take more constructive criticism in college. So that's definitely one of the most valuable things that I experienced in high school.
I'll bounce off of that. And like you said, the sitting in the circle, the first question you ask is to like, all right, say mine played. You said, Brady, what did you think? I was like, now I have to critique my own thing in front of everybody. I mean, I'm not going to say like, oh, that was awesome, because I know it was terrible. It was terrible.
Well, but it forces you to acknowledge the things that you think you're improving on, right? And then identify. So here's the thing. It's like that whole thing of like, before somebody can make fun of you, you might as well just make fun of yourself, right? So if you just go ahead and own it, like people respect that, right? So if you sit there and go, well, I thought that sound effect was, you know, actually now that I'm listening to it, probably not a great decision. You know, it's not like everybody's going to then pile on because you owned it. You know what I mean? They're okay. I was going to say that, but he owned it. So I guess I better find something else. But then, you know, I think that what happened is people actually were invested in one another's work. And that's rare. Like high school kids don't care about much of anything other than themselves, right? But what ended up happening is you created an environment where, like, you know, Jack cared about what Brady was doing because Jack wanted Brady to do well, you know, and they were working together on things, or even when they weren't. So when Jack talked about Brady's stuff, or when Sam jumped, it wasn't to roast them. It was to like make them get better, you know?
Especially when it got to the point where, you know, especially the three of us were doing pretty much everything together.
Yeah, it caused collaboration, you know, it caused a collaborative environment. And I don't know, it was really cool because there was a lot of philosophy, how about that, that I had. And I think what was great is like you guys and all the students really at Carmel that I taught for the most part, if you gave them the expectations and you set the standard high enough, like they had the means and the motivation to achieve it, which is what makes the community unique, is that, you know, you can be in a lot of communities and you can set the expectation, but man, they're worried about like where the next meal's coming from or how they're going to get to school, you know, like they got other priorities, right? At our school, it was always, you know, kids will do what you let them, right? And so whatever you set the bar to be, you guys were willing to put in the time to do it. But it was neat because you allowed for me to experiment, try out different things that might have been different than what you were doing in other classes. And we were doing things differently than anybody was doing in the state at that time with just anything with radio. But it only was possible because like I could depend on the students to actually handle it, you know?
Sam, do you have anything?
Yeah, I feel like just super out of it right here, like 5 seconds behind.
Jeez.
I tell you what, down about 10 points my junior year when I walk into a listening day and I had what I thought was a great review.
Sam.
Brown band ended up getting flamed. You know, you thought it would have come from their producers or something. And I was like working for the band. I learned that not everything I do is gold. So I really learned to kind of take my own criticism there. But I wanted to know, you know, a ton of effort into this station. You mentioned the remodeling. What do you miss most about it? You've been gone for 4 or 5 years now, but what are some aspects of the station that you really look back on and miss?
I mean, it's all about the relationships, right? So I feed off of relationships. So this last couple months has been wretched for me. Like it's horrible because I need to be around people and engaging with people to just feel, alive. So, when it's people of similar goals, all in this environment. And it was cool because like this is what I tell people the most about the uniqueness of that position was that I was able to be around kids for 4 years, like every day or every other day, however you want to look at it. And that to me was like the most unique thing. Cause even, most high school teachers at the most they're going to get is like a year with you, right? Many of them only get a semester. I was able to see you guys and it started off with 3 years and then it got to people could be in the class for 4 years. It's like, I saw you guys grow up. I saw you every other day, so the Sam Wiederhaft that came in as a sophomore is not the same one that left as a senior. And I think that probably was the coolest thing for me was to just be part of that process for you. And now that I've got my own kids, right, they're all elementary school aged, as a parent, you lean on those kind of those people, those pillars in the school to kind of help your kid out, right? So, what's unique for me is like my son is being taught by Ms. Edwards, whose son Jack was a football player that I coached, right? And my son has now had her for 2 straight years. And so, you get to be part of this ecosystem. So, I've now kind of moved on, don't keep in as close contact with everybody. But I think it's all about trying with my new role. I'm just trying to tap into the network of that world, and just learn from people, get to know people and kind of grow from it.
How you finessed to get a radio only SRT at one point to get everybody together even more than we were in the first place was awesome.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Bonnie Grimble was the department chair for a really long time, and then Terry Ramos took over. I fought really early on for money all the time, for scheduling. And I was very outspoken because I was like, look, like if you guys want to be proud of this, like here's what you need to do. And I'm sure that I annoyed. And Principal Williams has told me as much. But the cool thing is that school, it's like the same thing from the admin to the teachers. It's like we hold you to a high expectation. We want our programs to be successful. You need to think about ways to make it successful, but we're going to give you the opportunity to make it happen. You know what I mean? So things like that SRT, or just the fact that like, dude, we were letting high school kids stay in the building until 9 o'clock at night, sometimes even later, right? 11 o'clock at night for that matter. And that's like takes a huge amount of trust, right? I mean, from an admin perspective, okay, yeah, let's let sophomores and juniors like stay at the school until 11 o'clock at night. Like there was a lot of support when it came to that.
Your current career, I think we all have a general idea of what you do, but I mean, in your words, what is tracking football?
It's a scouting service. So, football has many aspects to it. The coaching side is what I had always been a part of. But as I was a high school teacher very early on, I coached multiple different sports, not just football. And one of the guys that I taught with, his name's Mark Branstad. He's the CEO of this company. He's the founder of it, right? So him and I, way back in 2003, were trying to figure out how can we get football players to come out for track. So we started to research famous football players, put posters on kids' lockers. Hey, Herschel Walker ran this fast, or that Mike Singletary threw the shot put this far. Why don't you come out for track and see how you can do? That then turned into kind of an obsession of Excel, research. We would get media guides, and their, internet was in existence, but not to the level that it is now. So, we would just do a bunch of research. And anyway, what we ended up coming up with was like, is there another way to evaluate how good a football player is beyond just watching him play football, right? How do we use information like multi-sport participation, performance data from track and field events? How do we use this to put together ways to predict, what kind of athlete is this guy? So the whole company is based around the premise that because we have studied essentially college and NFL football's backlog over the last 20 years, and all the guys that are playing today are in our database, and we know what they did when they were in high school. How tall were they? How much did they weigh? What position did they play? Did they also play basketball? Did they also shot put? We take all those data points and we've come up with some algorithms and some scores that can handle that to then say, okay, I've got a 17-year-old kid in North Carolina. He's a defensive end. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. He runs the 100-meter dash in 11.8, and he throws the shot 45 feet. How does he compare to every defensive end that North Carolina has had? And that's what we created. And so it's essentially a scouting service, but it's an objective-based scouting service. I could watch film and I could give my opinions, and that's what most scouting services do for college football programs. But anymore, they have hired so many people at the college and the NFL level to do that, right? They don't need more opinions. It's like, don't tell me what you think, tell me what you know. And so the success of our business has been based on that. We can just say, look, like, we're telling you things about people that you've evaluated, that you've coached, but you didn't know these things about them and you hadn't looked at it this way. And by looking at it this way, it can actually empower you to kind of check off more boxes, become a better evaluator.
In your backlogging of data, you said 20 years. Are there any players who now we know are these great athletes that have sort of surprised you in their high school days?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples of guys that, well, Jeremy Chin would be a good example. I mean, a recent one, right? I mean, you're talking about, because was he playing at Fishers when you guys were in high school?
Did. Yeah.
I thought. So, Jeremy's a kid.
Dang it, Sam.
But Jeremy's a good example of a kid that now he developed a little bit later, like as a senior, he really put together some impressive track numbers and he grew a lot in college, like got taller, got bigger. But that's a kid who, plays at a good high school, in the Indianapolis area, was on a successful team, did not have a lot of attention coming out of that high school. Football coaches knew he was a good player. I mean, he played both ways for him and, we knew of him, but he gets, he goes to Southern Illinois, right? And has a great career at Southern Illinois and then gets drafted. And it's like, it's pretty rare period for people to get drafted out of Southern Illinois. And so you look at a kid like that and you go, how did he get to the NFL? And then you look at the numbers that we've got on him and you go, well, look, like even when he came out of high school, he looked like what a safety has traditionally looked like that does track and field from a height, weight, speed, power perspective. So it's not too far-fetched to think that he had the athletic ability or the call it the prototype or whatever. And that's not an end all be all, but it's like he definitely was capable of playing at a higher level than Southern Illinois, right? So that's an example of I think where the numbers could have said, yeah, you may not see everything you want to see on film, but like there's something here that suggests that his ceiling is pretty high. And maybe, you can develop that at a higher rate than another kid could.
Spill, you've gotten some pretty impressive endorsements and relationships with some pretty high-level Division I football programs. How have you been able to build up those relationships so that they're using your service through the past couple of years?
I'm teaching them. It's the same stuff I did to you guys, It's no different. That's been the beauty of this whole thing, is that I can be the same person that I've been, right? Because I look at sales as educating, right? So you don't know something that I know. I need to learn what the thing that I know how to do can best serve you first, right? I need to learn where your interests are, what you're into, where your pain points are. And then I need to insert this product and be able to come up with a lot of different ways for you to be able to benefit from it. So it's no different than radio. Like I had to sell radio to you guys, right? Like I wasn't, I mean, you came into the class for whatever reason, but I still had to sell you every day, like that this was something worth your time and investment, right? And that's all sales has been for me, is that, you know, I get to have conversations with people and they're enabling an environment where they're like, look, like, how can I do this better, you know, or differently? Or what do you know about how so-and-so does this? Can you help me, you know, understand that? So that's the approach that I've taken. And it's been pretty cool because, you know, I get to rely on the skill set that I feel like I'm comfortable relying on, but it's kind of in a whole new environment.
What's the coolest facility that you visited?
Dude, it's such an arms race, right? And in times like these, it's interesting to look back at some of the facilities and the remodels that I've looked at. You go, you know, what's necessary and what's not, you know, when, you know, people are closing programs and sports are getting cut and so on and so forth. However, and I think I told Brady this last time we spoke, like Oregon, for whatever reason, like the brand of Oregon has always been something that has excited me. And when I coached at Carmel, Kevin Wright and I had an opportunity to go to Oregon and learn from like Chip Kelly and Scott Frost and Mark Helfrich and stuff. And so that experience was great. And then I got to go back to Oregon. It might've been 2 years ago, I guess. And got to see the Mariota Sports Performance facility. That thing, like, it looked like it was from another planet. Like it was so cutting edge and futuristic, and just the technology that they incorporated, the design, like it was really cool. So I, you know, and then you'd walk around the players lounge or whatever, and the guy'd be like, well, the guy that toured me, this is a funny story too, is Matt Leach, Jake's brother. So Jake was a radio student of mine and a football player. His older brother, Matt, I didn't really ever know, but he ended up getting an assistant, you know, recruiting assistant job at Oregon. So I show up for this call or for this meeting with Oregon, and I had to meet with, like, you know, some of their like higher admin type people in their team meeting room. And after the meeting, they're like, would you like a tour? And I'm like, of course I would. And they put Matt Leach in front of me. I'm like, Leach? And he kind of looks like Jake, you know? And I was like, are you a Carmel kid? He's like, yeah. He's like, my brother said that you were his team. And so anyway, it was so surreal. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and there's the Carmel connection. But he toured me, and we're walking around. He's like, yeah, that rug cost $100,000. You know, I'm just like, holy cow. Like, but there's been so many. And what's neat is everybody, you can tell, like, they all kind of copy each other. So it's like, once you've seen one player's lounge, you've seen them all. Like, hey, we got an Xbox. Hey, we got a golf simulator. Hey, we've got this. It's like, okay. Like, I've seen that. It's those that have like kind of the unique thing, or like the tradition thing. Like I told Brady, I think a little bit ago, like LSU, I went to LSU, right? And so like I literally walked into Death Valley and like hit the windpipe, you know, and like, I mean, I'm a nerd about football, right? So like that was like crazy. I like went down the slide at the Clemson facility and stuff. Like, I don't know, you know. So it's been fun, because now I haven't been able to do that in some time, because and I don't know that I'll ever go back to any of these places. It'll be just Zoom calls for the rest of our life. But you know, it's been pretty cool.
How has your reach grown, you know, in this time where you aren't able to actually be in front of people, but you're able to, you know, virtually meet with them?
We've always felt like there was one of the strengths of tracking football was that, or the only reason we were going to survive early on was because we could sell people without being in person. And if we weren't able to do that, we would have never gotten started, because just the costs of having to get out there and do those things is, you know, formidable for a startup company. So we've been used to calling people, doing screen shares, making that kind of the first encounter. And a lot of the times the visits are usually after they've become clients, and now we're training them and we want to solidify the relationship. So because we have grown our client base, I mean, we're certainly still trying to get new clients, but we've really embraced Zoom. I've found, so we used to just do phone calls and screen shares, but not have the faces, right? So we didn't do the video conferencing stuff as much until like the last couple months. And I really, really love the video conferencing stuff. Like I don't want to have a phone conversation and a screen share anymore because I don't know if the guy's paying attention. Having that visual has been huge for me because I can just feed off the nonverbal stuff, right? So I've enjoyed it. I mean, I want to get out. I want to travel again. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think it shows people that, you're dedicated to them when you come to their house, their home, and, you show them attention. But we've been doing all right with the Zoom, and both from a client retention and training. And then also, there's been 3 SEC schools that I've pitched in the last month, like big SEC schools that we don't have as clients, that we were never able to get a phone call with, but now in a time like this, we're able to, and like it's looking positive right now. So, I mean, it creates opportunities as well.
Going off of Jack's last question about the facilities, I'll go to the people. What are some of the biggest characters or the biggest, most entertaining people or coaches you've met along your way?
I don't think people quite realize the structure of college football staffs anymore. I think we all just kind of think about the head coach, the position coaches, and all that. There's a huge element of off the field support staff at these universities. I mean, especially at the big ones. And so that area has really grown rapidly in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's starting to get filled with like really young people, and young people that don't even want to, like, maybe not even played football, certainly don't want to coach football, but like they're graphic designers, and they're going in and leading the creative teams for their recruiting staffs, people like Matt Leach who just want to be a scout, they just want to be a talent evaluator. Football has always been dominated by the position coaches. Well, I don't talk a lot to the position coaches. I talk mostly to these personnel people. And so think of it at the NFL level, we always have known there's a personnel staff, there's a scouting staff, there's all that, there's a general manager, well, that's happening at the college levels too. So I think it's neat because there's a lot of youth, there's a lot of innovation, in a lot of different directions, not just the one that we work in. I think from an experience standpoint, I've always talked about 2 things that just kind of shook me was, when I had to go to Michigan State at the time, Coach D was there. He's not there anymore. They've got a new staff, but Coach D's, kind of a tenant in college football, right? He's been there forever, and he's a well-respected coach. I was brought in by the DPP to do the presentation, and I, usually I just go to an office and I kind of talk to him. He put me in their team auditorium, like their huge team room, right? Where there's like huge screens behind me and like the podium and all the chairs. And he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna let you get set up, and then I've invited, the staff to come in, and like, here comes the entire staff, right? And they all sit where the players sit. Coach D is like in the front row, legs crossed, and I'm standing at his podium, like presenting, and he's like raising his hand, asking a question. I'm like, Coach, like, it's your room, like, you don't have to raise your hand, you know what I mean? Like, so like that was super surreal. And then the other one that stood out to me was at Tennessee. So we, Mark and I were able to go to Tennessee and sit in there, and we were there for like 8 hours, which was like the longest we had ever like spent at a campus or whatever. We met with the track and field staff. We met with like multiple different coaches. And then at one point we're kind of sitting in their coach's office, their big coach's meeting room. And it's Coach Pruitt, Coach Chaney, Coach Will Friend, Coach Ainsley. So like the offensive line coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, head coach, sitting around, and like we're the ones showing them, and they're just kind of hanging out, asking questions. Coach Pruitt's like, he's got people running phones into him so he can get on the phone real quick with a recruit, and then they run out. People are like, hey, Coach, you got this other meeting? He's like, no, I'm good. I'm staying here on this one. And like we sat and just talked shop for like, 2 hours, right? They brought in barbecue while we were in there. I mean, it was really cool, So those are really the 2 ones that have stood out the most.
Sam?
I was waiting for Sam to chime in for something.
Yeah, here we go. All right. I want to finish off my last question, kind of more on the technical side. But I know that your Twitter feed is always spraying out facts about dual sport athletes. That's what your entire business. But what are you seeing in football players that are also doing track? I mean, what makes that kind of athlete different than, playing football or somebody who's just doing track or just focusing in one sport?
Well, I think every athlete's unique regardless of what they do, right? And I'm always careful because like that message has kind of been, that whole multi-sport participation message has kind of been the thing that has gotten us a lot of media coverage and probably gotten us more attention than maybe what we would have normally gotten with what we do. But it's just as facts, you know what I mean? The point being that some people take that and make it, well, you have to do another sport if you want to be a successful football player, right? Like that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is like, if you're a really good football player at the college or NFL level, you were probably the best athlete at your high school, and the best athletes at a high school can typically showcase those athletic traits in multiple different ways and in multiple different sports. I mean, even a guy like Britt Beery, who, is a recent Carmel grad, who was a basketball player, Morgan Newton, who's one of the best football players to come out of Carmel, went to Kentucky, football, basketball player, didn't do track, track and football just kind of blend easily together because, you got football in the fall, you can't play football year round. Track is in the spring, and it's obviously an athletic development environment. So like, especially in Texas, where more high school Division I signees, come out of Texas than any other state, right? I mean, you're talking like over 75% of guys that sign D1 scholarships from Texas do football and track. So track just happens to be like the most participated sport in front of basketball. But then you look at like certain positions and it's almost like mandatory. Like every running back that was drafted in this year's draft ran track in high school, every single one of them. And it's usually like in the 90th percent, like you're talking, there's not a year where there's like less than 90% of running backs that did track and football. At offensive line, it's more like 50-50. So getting back to the question is the reason that I like track participation is it gives you verified, historic, and universal information about that kid. And when I say verified, it's, you've been to a track meet, it's FAT timed, right? State sanctioned events. It's not some guy with a stopwatch, right? When you talk about it being historic, I can take a track data point from this fall or this spring, compare it to something that happened 15 years ago. It's the same event, it's the same standard, right? And then universal, because like, it doesn't matter if you run a 100-meter dash in Indiana or Florida, it's you can compare those two data points because they're the same thing. So the point is that football players that get drafted, 88% of them played another sport in high school. Now, does that mean that you're never going to get to the NFL because you don't play another sport? Of course not. Like, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that 88%. And then people are like, well, of course they did because they're the best athletes in the world. And I'm like, exactly. And they prove it. And Brady Clain, who, played football, but was never going to be a D1 football player, myself included. I say this all the time. I could have gone and paid for all sorts of training, and I could have gone to all sorts of camps. The bottom line is I was a 6'3", 225-pound offensive center coming out of high school for a state championship high school team that lost 3 games in 4 years. I was not going to be a Division I player no matter what because I didn't have just the raw tools, So it wouldn't have mattered if I would have specialized and paid and done all this special stuff. I would have never happened. So my whole thing from a coaching perspective is I don't care what you do. Whatever's best for you is best for you. But the whole point is like, don't get caught up in this mentality that because you go train at a certain, facility, that somehow that's going to make you a college football player. Maybe it'll make you a college baseball player. Maybe it'll make you a college basketball player. I'm not talking about those sports. I know football,
Now, I have one question, differing, going back to our original topic of starting off you as a teacher, we're in this time now where everyone's at home. Your kids are at home. You're homeschooling again. When you walk into the kitchen in the morning, do you say hello, students, and do you cover up the clock on the wall or the
Man,
microwave, whatever, so they can't see what time it is?
I've been getting my butt kicked, man. Like I've either lost a step or like when you're trying to teach your own kids, it's a different ball game, you know? And so we tried at first. I was like early on in this thing, I was like, yeah, I know Canvas and I know the platform and like I've put together lessons, like this is going to be a breeze, right? And then, you know, you try to get a kindergartner, a second grader, and a fourth grader to all stay engaged for like a couple of hours at the same time, all like on their own individual devices, all like they got to go to, you know, 5 different places each. And I'm like running around just trying to figure out what fire to put out next. So I had this plan, man. I was like, yeah, we're going to have a routine. We're going to sit and eat breakfast at 8:15, and then we're going to start eating. Dude, like if they wake up at 9, they wake up at 9. Like we'll get it done when it gets done. You know, if this extends like into the fall, the wife and I are going to have to really put our heads together. But yeah, you're trying to, you know, and in the middle of it, you're still trying to do a full-time job, you know, both of us. So it's been trying, but you know, it's taught us a lot. And you know, this whole idea that you know, everybody's kind of going through their own challenges, right? Whether it's that they're out of work or that they have to change their rhythm or they've had people get sick or whatever. You know, I think we're all just trying to make our way through it and not just survive, but thrive. But sometimes we put this extra pressure on ourselves, like I've got to come out of this a better person. And what it's like, I just got to come out of it first. You know what I mean? Like we'll become the better people and we'll learn from it. But you don't have to feel this pressure, right? To like be excellent at everything. Cause like, this is all new, you know?
Guys, I don't have anything else. I think that was a perfect way to leave us off.
Oh yeah. Here, how about this, Spill? Because you asked me this this trivia question, if you want to call it, when we talked last about the one player not signed from the draft.
Oh yeah. There was one guy that went to the combine this year that was not either drafted or signed as a UDFA. Who was it?
Shea Patterson.
Got it.
Nice one, Sam.
On Twitter today. I saw that.
Twitter.
I think he said it came from Twitter, but that's like the only thing I got clearly was the answer.
Yeah.
Shea Patterson, and I heard the word Twitter after that. That's it.
Twitter, the
I
great
saw
informant.
it on Twitter.
There
Is
you
that
go.
better?
Yep.
Yes.
Man.
Yep. I've got like the HD video going on over here, Sam. Just to let you know, like I got the touch-up thing happening here. So you gotta get up to the. You gotta get up.
I got
to,
it over here.
you got like a hamster on a wheel, like turning your internet right now.
Yeah, I know.
He says 5 seconds later.
You got any fun virtual backgrounds you've been doing on these meetings?
No, you know, it's funny. There's this, you know, I'm in my, so that's the other thing too. My wife has to do a lot of Zoom calls and stuff. So she's got a room that she does hers in, but you know, this is one of them. I try to center it so like the lamps are like on either side of me, you know. But that's another thing that's been interesting, right? You have these conversations with people, and like I kind of feel like the people that put up the virtual things, like they're hiding something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I get distracted by that. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't want you hiding things from me. You know?
Where are you right now? Exactly.
I'm in my dining room. I'm at dining room table right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, awesome. You unpacking boxes yet? You getting everything finally unpacked?
We're close. There's still a few boxes laying around. Yeah. So we moved during the coronavirus, which was like a really smart decision. So that was, you know, that's been a challenge as well. We're a little more settled than what we were maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but lots of changes, guys, you know, and all we can do is adapt and adjust and evolve. And, you know, I think we're going to make it through, but this is not going to be the same. It'll be interesting. Like I was talking to my brother, and he works for like a pretty big, national banking chain. And he's like, I'm going to sell my car. I'm like, you're going to sell your car? He's like, I'm selling my car. He's like, I don't need 2 cars. Like, I'm not going back in the office for another calendar year. He was like, the bank branch, they don't want people there, and I don't need to be there to do my job. And so he's like, dude, I'll just sell my car. And if I need a car again, like, I'll buy it later on. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. The whole, that whole idea of like, what does working look like? I think people are adjusting to this right now. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, you're used to this environment a little more than maybe I am.
Yeah, you're right. I've been looking at it as, what are people going to be doing when they open things up? How long will it take for people to get back to normal? Like, if people can go to a college football game in September, will they? And I think that humans are naturally forgetful after, pretty quickly. So maybe not right away, but when stadiums start opening up again, I think that people will be ready to go back and they're willing to take the risk.
I agree with that. But one of the big things that I've been, my one example is, all right, when restaurants open back up, you go to a restaurant, you're sitting every other table, and the person 3 tables away from you coughs or sneezes. What are you going to do? You're going to freak out. You're going to be like, well, hang on, let me move tables. Let me get going. What's your plan of action there? So that's the one I'm looking at. I think once, sports gets back with fans, I think everyone will flock to it. No problem.
I've been thinking about it more of the broadcasting side of things, because I know that ESPN's broadcasting Korean baseball right now from their studios or home, and they're literally just watching a feed and then doing play-by-play over that. So is that something that is more widely used? That they have that kind of technology for big broadcasts on ESPN or CBS or whatever. I mean, that's one thing. And then the whole work from home culture is, I think, really going to take a huge boom, in the next couple of years, because we know that we have the technology now. So, why do we need a work office? It's just that kind of thing is going to really, really change.
How long do you think before we start shaking hands again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll change norms, and it already has, right? But, like you said, I don't know that normal is ever going to be normal again, right? So I think whatever does happen will be the new normal, and we'll kind of reconstruct some of the social structures that we've got, and I think the sports thing is really interesting. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations on our staff about it. I've talked to a lot of college football staff about it, and while I think that people are extremely resilient and want it to happen, like you said, I don't know what happens if fans are allowed. Will they come? And I think it all just comes down to geography a little bit. I think you're going to see certain areas of you're already seeing it, like Arizona, right? Brady is like, come on. Like California is like, we're sheltering in place for like 3 more months, and Arizona's like, we're ready to open tomorrow.
Arizona, it was announced this last week, but today they're like, all right, professional sports can resume.
Yeah,
sports can resume.
And I think that's interesting because, I just read an article about Cal football, about how they've got to look at if the Pac-12 is playing football, right? But their area is still highly regulated and restricted. Like, are they going to have to go elsewhere to be able to host their training camp? They have to go to Nevada or whatever to host their the college's training camp. I mean, there's so many things up in the air. I do like that. It feels like a lot of the major commissioners are not saying much right now because there's so much conjecture, right? But I would rather them wait to just come out with a decision than what I felt like we were in, where it was like, well, it's going to be this, and then it would get pushed back 2 weeks, and that's going to be. I just couldn't handle that. Like, that was happening in Indiana, right? It was like, well, we're going to come back to school on this date, and then that date would have, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks later. Oh, now it's. See, I don't like that. Like, I'd rather just say, okay, well, you let me know when we know something.
Yeah, I saw an article. You said the college football wise, but this was the NFL side of things, where I think it was the Chargers and the Raiders could, share a stadium in Vegas with zero conflicts. Scheduling. So are you going to see NFL teams doubling up, or, professional sports leagues, picking, all right, these are the 10 cities deemed okay to play in. Go.
Well, and I think the professional leagues are one thing. And I was, obviously with baseball, there's now just kind of rumblings from a player representation standpoint from the union of just about, well, just because you open it up, like, am I going to come back for the salary, like that it's going to get cut and so on and so forth. That'll be interesting. But then the college side of things, man, it's just like, I know we've got Ball State, we've got Butler, and we've got Arizona State, represented here, right? And it's like, those are three completely different levels of college athletics, right? And, there are that whole higher education institution, like, how does it look if you don't get revenue from the NCAA tournament in the spring and then also from the football programs in the fall? Like, what does the world look like for just the operational budgets of universities, so in some cases I feel like, man, like, don't they have to play? Like, I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of money to lose.
Yeah, I think I saw LSU's revenue in athletics, some chart of that, and football. I mean, it was astronomical compared to even basketball and baseball, and I think all other sports lost money. So you're right. It's definitely. I think there's going to be a lot of programs that get shut down if we don't have football this fall, and I know some commissioners have already said it. I don't think that they can put the athletes out there if the students come back to school. It's just not reality. So I think we see professional sports come back, but college is still up in the air. So it'll be interesting.
I know for ASU for sure that they had, 4 sports that were profitable in revenue. That was football, both men's and women's basketball, and then baseball for us as well. So like you said, there's 26 to 30 Division I athletics at each school, and 4 are profitable. How much can you rely on those 4 if you scrap everything else? And you can't do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll all, and it affects everybody, not just in sports. And I feel like it's difficult because you don't want to be trivial, like, hey, I want to see my football or whatever, when there's like a lot of despair just with essential aspects of our society, but yeah, it's an unprecedented thing. And I like how it's caused me to adapt a little bit, and I've learned, but it's certainly not been an easy thing for anybody. And I think that stuff like this it's fun, it's good to be able to see familiar faces. And I think that a lot of people are having that experience where, they're finding new ways to connect. And that's kind of what humans do, right? We're always trying to find different ways to interact and connect. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah. Zoom's revolutionary. Like you said, finding ways to connect. The other show that I do, there's 2 guys in California, 1 in Washington and 1 in Indiana. So it's all over the place and it's seamless.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see. There's going to be so many new software platforms and products that, revolve around all of this. I know my wife is into like Microsoft Teams and how that's building, and it'll be really intriguing to see the new ways that the technology is put to use. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch the Dan Patrick Show. I've been a huge fan of, and like the fact that they're kind of moving forward without missing a beat right now. Like, you watch some shows and you're like, yeah, this isn't worth watching it because they're not talking about anything and they're not doing it. The Dan Patrick Show, what was great about it was like before this happened, they weren't just reliant on pure sports talk. Like they could weave all sorts of different things, and that whole like idea of audio and video simultaneously happening. And now they're doing it from, remote locations even. And I don't know. I love things like that, because you just see people that kind of do what they've always done, but because they were innovative to begin with, like they're kind of ahead of the curve of the people that just had like the camera in front of the guy that was in the radio studio,
Couldn't agree more. Sam, you got anything else?
Wait.
No, I don't. Thank you for tolerating my delay, Spill. It was great to talk to you again. I know we're all super thankful for the time you took with us today.
Of course. Send me the recording of this, and I'll put it on a WHA performance rubric. I'll get it back to you.
Perfect.
18 out of 25 for all of us.
It doesn't matter what it is. It could be
I'll
good or
just
bad.
Close my eyes. Yep. Just start. Yep. All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Bill.
Thanks a
Still
lot.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Spill.
A legend.
Unbelievable.
Careful, guys. You can still hear us.
A legend that is Brian.
Living
Spill.
legend.
Oh man, what a guy. And he's one of those guys where we can literally bring up anything with and he'll touch on it. Like he'll get to it. We started off that conversation talking about, hey, here's how we were in high school. And we ended with coronavirus. And in between we hit everything. Man, I forgot to ask him the 2 times I've talked to him. I want to ask him about the Jordan documentary, what his thoughts are on it.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he definitely has some thoughts. I thought there was a chance we might go down the road of some stories of all the stupid things that we did.
I'm so glad we didn't.
But I'm very glad that we didn't because there's too many.
There are just countless stories that we could do that would get us in trouble now, would get him in trouble. I mean, we should ask him like, hey, we should have told him the story of when we ran 40 yards and when we were in 40s in the hallway, or when we when the power went out in the studios, we're like, let's just go run around the auditorium and see what that's like.
He probably had like his own cameras planted throughout the high school and was watching us anyways.
Well, funny enough, he did. Remember the cameras that were in all the studios?
Yeah.
We should have asked him, were those actual cameras?
I should have played the recording of the Jake Leach Total Badass little mix down that we did. Because we did that on a day that we had a sub and he wasn't there.
So we didn't get a lot done, during the class time when he was there, and when there was a sub.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We would record like parody stuff and just totally mess around when a sub was there. It was, and we still have some of it too.
Sam and I did. Remember the sports reports that we did? The fake sports reports, Sam?
Oh. I don't remember what we said. I definitely remember doing them when Spill wasn't there. Just going back to the nature of the way that we did things. So no, I remember doing some of those. Those were fun.
All right, I'll ask you guys this question: what's scarier? You're sitting in the on-air studio and the Spill phone rings, or you're sitting in like the sports edit bay and you hear the door swing open behind you?
I would say the door, because I mean, on the air, we still had to maintain somewhat of a code of conduct because, we were actually on radio. In that booth, some crazy things happen. So, I mean, yeah.
Crazy stuff.
I told you guys in the beginning that, or I told Spill that, my brother David is about to senior. So he was having his awards last night and he wanted me to watch it with him. A memory that I haven't thought about in a while back, when these kids were talking, somebody was talking about, because I think the guys that were seniors this year had still their freshman year. So they were talking about how, because there's 2 periods of radio and 1 period would have them first. And when Spill was angry, I mean, we remember how angry Spill got because of things that would happen at the station. So he would get angry at the first class first. The first class would get the angry Spill first, and then they would tell the second class, "Oh, Spill's about to rip into you today," and that would always instill the worst fear in me. And then walking into that class and expecting to get yelled at was just, oh my gosh. But I mean, that stuff really prepared us all for the future in a good way.
I think it was twice, I got an email that said, "Meet me in my office." And that was the most terrified I've ever been. I mean, by a teacher specifically.
Oh yeah. Because I mean,
He scared me more than like a lot of my coaches in sports.
Absolutely. You look at what his classroom was. He had like 10 different rooms to an individual classroom.
Yeah. I mean,
It
all
was
6 studios.
6 studios, the on air, his
newsroom.
class, the newsroom, his office. It's like 8 or 9.
The equipment closet.
Oh, the equipment closet.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
that setup was unbelievable. Like,
Awesome. It's so
even
good.
even getting to Ball State, the student radio station that they have. That, sorry WCRD, but you claim you're one of the top 40 college radio stations in the country. You're not. It's horrible.
KSC,
Um,
ASU, right back at you.
I
Same
mean,
thing.
it's god awful. It really made me like. Spill was right. He's like, you're not going to get this at even a professional level, and he was
No.
totally right. It's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah. So do you guys? I mean, do you want to talk about anything else before we sign off, or just go?
Up to you guys. You want to take a shot at daily stupidity? If we have anything?
Well, yeah, I had one, and I think it might be the same for you guys. But
Yeah.
that Giants cornerback who decided to rob a ton of people. Wasn't it at a party?
It was
with people he knew?
It was at a barbecue. And it was him and now a current Seahawks DB. They were at a barbecue and they were grilling out, and all of a sudden, boom, semi-automatic weapons were pulled out, and like $1,200 or $12,000 in cash, a Rolex, I think it was like a Hublot watch. It was at like a Admiral Pagot watch, so like $30,000 worth of watches at least.
And
one
the
of them
guy was scheduled to make millions over the next 3 years or whatever.
Yeah. And then they had 3 perfectly placed getaway cars.
Guess not perfect enough. But
Yeah.
imagine being at a barbecue with like your family, friends, and everything. There's 20, 30 people, whatever. And then one of them just decides to pull out a semi-automatic weapon. I mean, I can't even imagine. What an idiot. Did he actually think he would get away with it?
I have no
NFL
idea. What's up, Sam?
I said the NFL has a crazy offseason so far, but mine was different because mine happened. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And Brady, you might know about this. Have you been keeping up with the iRacing
Yeah.
that IndyCar's doing?
Mhm.
Okay, so they did like a like a little Indy 500 kind of
Oh,
thing. I
yeah.
think it was only like 75 laps.
75 laps.
Yeah, so count the finish. Yeah, it was a shortened race, but it was going down to the finish, and it crashed in turn 3 on the last lap. So these was Santino Ferrascu. We're running 1-2 down the front stretch, and Santino Ferrucci, who was right in second, hits the back end of Oliver Askew. They both crash, and I think Scott McLaughlin comes in and wins it. And it was just like the biggest thing on Twitter. Like, why would you ever? There were like 2 split groups. Why would you do that? And this is only a video game. Who cares? So I thought that was really funny, and people were getting mad at Santino Ferrucci for doing that. But in the end, it's a video game. I know I think it was streamed on NBCSN, so it was kind of a big deal. But it was IndyCar to have fun while they can't race right now.
Did you
A fun
see
fact about the director for that, I'm pretty sure it was him. He's a Ball State Sports Link alum, and he directed that.
Well, hey, there you go.
Wow.
Sam, did you see the Lando Norris part of that? Current F1 driver for McLaren who raced in that race and he's like, oh, they didn't want an F1 driver winning, so they crashed someone on purpose, or not an IndyCar driver. And like Paul Tracy went at him. It was like, dude, shut up. Like, we don't want you here.
Yeah. No, I saw that. I mean, it's just it's crazy because it's literally it's iRacing. It's a video game, and Graham Rahal put a screen grab on Twitter of his car, and you know how tall that I don't know what they call it,
scoring
the
pylon
line, the line they have for the pylon.
The pylon.
And Graham Rahal's car was over that. So it's people were actually taken seriously. I don't know. That blows my mind.
Yeah, that was, I mean, looking at that photo from that was, I remember, very, very funny, very entertaining. And seeing his car, you know, he did that and then it landed and then flipped into the wall and then, you know, ran all over the place. And, you know, what would that be like in real life? Nothing. That wouldn't happen in real life. But here, I got this photo right here. I'll pull it up.
I have two things. One, on the topic of NFL players being stupid in the offseason, Colin Cowherd took a shot at Earl Thomas today. That's his name, right?
Earl Thomas?
Yeah,
Or Colin Cowherd?
Earl Thomas. Sometimes, you know, when you say like a name and it just kind of sounds weird, like you don't really know what you're saying. Oh my God.
And I tell you what, that new arrow screen would have protected Graham Ray Hall if that were to happen in real life.
Yes. Yes, it would. I mean, you look at this, it looks like it's the X Games and they're going like the height meter, like, 33 feet in the air.
Jeez.
Yeah. Luckily, Graham Ray Hall's computer is okay.
Anyways,
Bizarre.
Cowherd was talking about the Seahawks and how many wins they've had in the past however many years. And he goes, just ask Earl Thomas. I hear he's pretty close with his brother, by the way.
That's not a shot. That's Colin being Colin. That's awesome, though.
Yeah. And then the other thing, Sam, I know you have an opinion on this because I've already seen it. Rams uniform upgrades.
Oh.
Interesting.
Ugh.
Listen, who is I can't remember his name right now. It's escaping me. Eric Dickerson. Eric Dickerson, the Rams legend running back, came out and said exactly what they're soft. I mean, they are the softest uniforms, especially that off-white one. It looks
Bone.
like a practice uniform.
It's bone. The
literally
color is
just white
bone.
with these yes, it's these cheesy numbers, and you know I think the thing that makes the cheesiness of it is that little patch, Los Angeles Rams. And I think Pat McAfee on his podcast said, I think it was really funny. He said, "Oh, who are we playing again?" And he looks up at the jersey. "Oh, it's the Los Angeles Rams." I mean, it is just ridiculous. I mean, I'm happy they kept the colors of the dark blue and gold because I think that's a good color. But, you know, make the numbers gradient on the blue uniforms. Why can't they just be a solid gold? I think they really, really messed up with this uniform, and the Chargers, you know, both playing in the same stadium this year in Los Angeles, completely overshadowed them with their uniform reveal.
Yeah.
And you wonder why, you know, you saw all the hype around the Chargers uniform release. Like they had, you know, everybody from Ian Rappaport to players. They're like, this is the best there is. Buddy of mine is a photographer for the Chargers, and I was talking to him about it. He's like, hands down, they're going to be the best in the league. Trust me, watch me. He showed me. I was like, yep, hands down, you win. You're sharing a stadium with a team that has the worst uniforms in the NFL now. It looks like if IKEA and Best Buy had a football team. It's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. Rams uniforms, no bueno. Talk about a tough offseason for them.
Ugh.
with the logo and now the uniforms. I mean, it's been bad. Really bad.
I can't even fathom with it. It's terrible. It's
It's
like someone opened up Microsoft Paint, clicked random, and said good enough.
I know. Seriously, the initial logo that they came up with, it looked like a ninth grader's school project. And he's like, yeah, I made a Rams logo. And then they just went with it. It
Looks
just
like
terrible.
It looks like one of the default logos when you're creating your own team in Madden.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, like the non-licensed, like the Ram, not Rams, Ram, single Ram.
I just don't know, why do you need a total rebranding? I mean, they had everything. What you needed was they really only needed a new white jersey, right? Because what were they were doing that for their home games. They were classic blue uniforms. They were wearing the white that they kind of had in St. Louis, but they had like the white horns on the helmet mixed well. So all you needed was a new white uniform, and I mean, they somehow made it worse than when they Rams, and I didn't understand the need for it.
If you're gonna Go ahead, Brady.
The renderings that they put out are terrible. The actual photos of the jerseys and the helmet itself are still very bad, but are at least a little better. Not much, but a little better.
Yeah. If you're going to rebrand like that, I feel like you have to be certain it's going to be a home run. And for whatever reason, they thought it was a home run and they're just getting absolutely ripped. So I understand you want to create, some buzz around the team and get fans excited when nothing's really happening right now. And you want to stay innovative, but if you are going to do it, you have to be 100% sure it looks great. And I have no idea what that process was, who gave it approval, but someone or really a lot of people screwed up in the process.
Yeah, it was a big time mistake.
What do you guys think of the new Colts their secondary logo?
The C with the Indiana inside. I mean, that's a great secondary logo. I think they did a good job. It's subliminal. It's simple enough. It looks like a horseshoe turned to the side. It has the state of Indiana in it. It incorporates everything that's good enough for a secondary logo, kind of like the Pacers secondary logo with the block Indiana that they did with, the Pacers color scheme and everything. So I think it's a pretty good fit for a secondary logo. You won't see it really anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think they need to put it anywhere prominent. I don't think
it's on like
good enough.
It's on the back of the neck. Perfect.
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But stick with the original horseshoe for as long as you possibly can, or the throwback bucking horse, bucking colt, whatever. That is awesome. But the new one, yeah, I mean, you can put it on some t-shirts, put it on the neck.
It's a great logo to put on a hat. Great logo for a hat.
Yeah, it's a good hat one.
What? I think Pat McAfee said that it was a good logo. Pat McAfee said it was a good logo to put on a hat. I also like, a subtle update where it was just nobody really notices and isn't because the Colts have great classic uniforms, right? And the numbers maybe had to be updated with a certain font. So I like uniforms, and I think it looks clean.
Falcons with the black to red gradient, iffy. We could spend hours discussing good and bads.
I'm not a big gradient guy. But I remember Sam used to absolutely torch the Carmel high school uniforms when we'd be going on the road and we'd get our first look at the uniforms and Sam would be like, "What the hell are these?"
Oh, yeah, no, I think it was our senior year, the road uniforms that we had that they were wearing when we were seniors. And it was like, it said Carmel down the pant leg. And oh my God, don't even start it on those.
Sam, you should start a separate podcast just on uniforms.
Uniformity.
Hey, there you go. You already have the title.
What did you say? What was the title, Brady?
Uniformity. It's a Twitter account that a guy at ASU runs. And he's like the one guy that puts out the jersey combos every week and, writes for like an actual, I think it's like the fan-sided account or the 24/7 or whatever it is that covers ASU. Okay. But his main title or Twitter is Uniformity. And he puts out every ASU jersey combo and writes like a whole article about it every week.
I look at a guy named, he's Canadian. His name's Chris Creamer.
Chris Creamer.
Yeah. He's got every logo form of any professional, or I think he does college too. And so I browse that from time to time. And
he's awesome.
Give my
Love
ratings.
That site.
That's a great idea.
I think a photo of mine got featured on his site, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So I was at the Crossroad Classic, IU Purdue Notre Dame Butler this past year at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. And I think it was at halftime at one of the games, they put the 2021 Final Four logo on the board. And they announced it like right then and there. And I took a photo of it and tweeted it to him. And he wrote a whole article. It's like, here's the here's the 2021 logo, and used my photo that I just took from my phone of the video board on that. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, there you go. Making moves.
Big moves.
Yeah.
Speaking of moves, I'm going to move to the kitchen to go get lunch. So let's wrap this puppy up.
Easy enough. I think we got everything covered. Last Dance featuring the Pacers this week. It's going to be fun.
Yes. Go Pacers, who can never get over the hump. And now the national audience will have the spotlight shown on that. So,
yeah.
Brady, I wanted to thank you for contacting Spill. That discussion that we covered all kinds of topics, and I really enjoyed talking with him after. God, it's been 4 years since graduated. Come on.
Yeah, crazy long.
I'll see if I can get Danny in the next couple weeks. He's obviously pretty busy.
He just signed his contract this week.
Yeah, just drafted. He said he'd love to come on, but maybe we can alter the hour of our show slightly just so we can get him on. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to some of my guys as well and see what I can do, ASU side of things, if we want to.
Cool. All right, fellas. Good to see you again.
Gentlemen, good as always.
See you guys.